the air.
Throughout the years, the Cruis'n series, Cruis'n USA, World, and Exotica, maintained a good reputation for succeeding in its ambitions as a simple arcade racing game, but it had that midway charm to it, the kind that only the 90s could give. That's what I think really made these games special. Between the stunts, the cool locations, the unique vehicles, being able to run over animals if you wanted to for some odd reason, except in the console versions cause Nintendo, the people at the start and finish line, the music, I think you get the idea. I always enjoyed the series as a kid, and I still do as an adult. Sadly, the series kind of faded from the public eye after a while. In 2001, Midway Games closed their arcade division to only focus on home console games. There were two Cruis'n games after this, Cruis'n Velocity on the GBA, which was less like the main Cruis'n games, and a port of another game that just had the Cruis'n name slapped onto it in an attempt to make a quick buck because Midway was desperate for money. That game was actually the spiritual successor to Cruis'n and even made by many of the same team as the original Cruis'n trilogy. But let's back up for a second. After Midway closed their division, several employees, including Cruis'n creator Eugene Jarvis and many others on the Cruis'n team, left and formed Raw Thrills in 2001. Their goal was to mainly create spiritual successors to old Midway games in addition to newer games for the arcades. Their second game was a successor to Cruis'n, The Fast and the Furious. Despite having two films only at this point, the first Fast and the Furious arcade game was a big success since it played like Cruis'n. Whether the flair and presentation match up to the original games, I'll leave that up to you. Though the less said about its port to the Wii, which didn't even have the FNF name because Bandai Namco had the rights for their console FNF game, the better. The series was successful enough to allow for several follow-ups: FNF Superbikes, FNF Drift, Superbikes 2, and FNF Supercars. Eventually, things came full circle in the late mid-2010s when a new entry in the Cruis'n franchise was play-tested under the names Cruis'n Adventure and Cruis'n Redline. Eventually, the name Cruis'n Blast was decided and unveiled on October 24, 2016 via a trailer on YouTube, with a North American arcade release in January 2017. About 4.5 years later, the game got a surprise release for the Nintendo Switch worldwide on September 14, 2021. Despite a slightly different flair that may have some OG fans not fully in it, Cruis'n Blast is still a joy for old and new fans of the franchise. Let's find out how. Cruis'n Blast has both single and multiplayer modes. Multiplayer modes let you do up to 4 players in split-screen racing, or you can use local play to connect 2 switches on the same network. Sadly, there is no online multiplayer, which is kind of a shame, but what can you do? The single-player section has 4 different modes. You've got Classic Arcade, which will let you race on the arcade tracks. You can do the standard time trials, and you can do a free race on any unlocked course. Many of them are locked from the start, and the only way to get them is to play the main mode, the Cruis'n Tour. The Tour is your basic tournament mode. You'll have a set of 4 races, each with their own theme. You can restart individual races, which is especially helpful for gold on the higher difficulties. There are 6 cups total, and they have 4 difficulty modes: easy, normal, hard, and extreme. You'll have to unlock the higher difficulties by playing through the lower difficulties. You also don't have to place first in all the races, but you have to place well in the majority of them for it to count, especially in the later cups and the like. After that, select your car, any upgrades if you can afford them, more on that later, and you're off. The actual racing in the game is pretty much similar to the original Cruis'n games of old, and it technically plays like the FNF games and its sequels/spin-offs by association. You'll start at one point of the course and work your way to the other end of it. In between that, there are ramps for plenty of jumps and stunt opportunities. The most basic one is a flip, which you can do by wheeling off a ramp. Drifting off a ramp leads to a helicopter, and doing a side wheelie off a ramp can lead to a barrel roll. You can also do barrel rolls off other opponents' cars, which is cool, and wheelies and all. but you can't do them off of traffic cars. That's annoying because you could do that in Exotica, but I digress. Another big change is that you no longer do the races under a time limit in the console version. I get why some would want that, but at least have an option for us old school fans who are used to that and want a challenge. During the races, you can actually find cash power-ups. These are the power-ups that will let you earn more cash to spend on stuff like upgrades and other things like that. Sometimes these are in plain sight, and other times you have to venture into a shortcut to find them. You can also get it by doing stunts. One last addition from the FNF games is the nitrous function, called Blast in this game, hence the name of the game. You get 3 of them per race, and you can activate them at any time, assuming you have at least one to use. When you complete a race, you'll earn a certain amount of XP depending on how well you place in a race, in addition to a cash bonus. Your car can be leveled up to 5 times. As you level your car up, you can unlock new upgrades for that car. 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively unlocks neon, decals, body kit, and engine. Stats for the car will automatically upgrade so they can be better at blasting and handling off-road roads and the like. You'll spend the cash you earn on these upgrades. Lather, rinse, repeat, and you have the game in a nutshell. There's not much to it, but fans of the franchise are probably used to that by now. With such simple gameplay, it's not a surprise the controls are equally simple, but they also match up very well. I did all my gameplay both on and off recording with a Pro controller, but using the Joy-Cons on a grip should be equally fine. Use A to accelerate, the left analog stick to turn, and you can click it for your horn, L for blast, R to drift, Y switches the views, X changes the music, and B brakes. It's pretty easy to grasp the controls and do stunts. Everything also works as it should, not much more to say. The graphics are also fine. While they aren't anything mind-blowing, I do think they did a good job of mixing the wacky, crazy, over-the-top style of the original games with some of the sleeker elements seen in the spiritual successors. A lot of that style came from the course design, especially Cruis'n World and Exotica, which had a bunch of creative stuff going on there. And a lot of that stuff is still going on here. From the hot-ridden desert of Death Valley, where you can get close to a tornado at one point, the beautiful islands of Madagascar that also involve you going near some temples, the bustling streets of London, where you end up going on top, jumping off of a train, and through the London Eye, Rio de Janeiro, which has a massive jump near the Christ the Redeemer statue, and the stormy neon-ridden streets of Singapore. There's a lot of good stuff going on here, but I'm not sure I could say the same for the new courses in the console version. The newer courses in the tours are just mostly derivative versions of the arcade ones. Not all of them, though. Some courses do come from Superbikes 3, but they each have a gimmick in them. Night Tour races take place at night, Escape Tour has cops chasing you, Storm Tour has races going on in stormy weather, Chopper Tour has choppers chasing after you, the Dino Tour has dinosaurs giving you trouble, and the UFO Tour has UFOs chasing after you. I would say this is a bit much, but then I remembered the series went to Mars with Cruis'n Exotica, so anything is possible at this point, really. Some courses do have newer sections not seen in the arcade versions, but for the most part you'll find it very familiar. There are at least some changes to help, like when races take place. Also, much more boost ramps, which weren't there in the arcade version, and they actually make performing flips more difficult since you don't automatically land in the right position like in World and Exotica. Despite this, everything still looks nice. Car models look nice and shiny, like they've just been prepared for the showroom, and the upgrades really help bring the over-the-top look out of them. On top of that, the models and animations for tracks and other environment set pieces look well. Jets flying towards the finish line in Death Valley and things like that. Little touches help bring things to life. But a few more extra touches, like crowds at the start and finish line, would have helped. Oh, and the girl with the checker flag, but something Nintendo. Lighting also isn't as good as the arcade version, with not much in the way of shadows and clouds and the like. Cruis'n Blast does keep a lot of what made the previous games good. The spiritual successor's good, and minimizes the bad for an enjoyable racing experience. It looks good, sounds good, plays and controls well, has plenty of content to keep you coming back, and it's a very pure, simple pick-up-and-play racer. However, there are some missing touches to make the game's style shine. Some lighting isn't as good as the arcade version. Some of the new courses just kind of blend together with the arcade ones. The upgrade replayability feels like grinding in parts. Some sound effects feel overpowering at times, and no online multiplayer does kind of suck. Still, since I think the game succeeds well in its ambitions, both as a sequel and on its own, I can recommend it for those looking for a simple racing game for their Switch that isn't Mario Kart. Especially for fans of the franchise who have had yet to play it. It's also just a good starting point, for newcomers, since it does everything the original games did well and then some. I got my copy for about $20, brand new from Best Buy, and if you can get it around that price, go for it. I give Cruis'n Blast a 4 out of 5.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.